Save the Semantics, episode 324. It is Monday, June 16th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday evening. NBA Finals, Game 5 is going to start relatively shortly, so I'll keep this one kind of brief, and then I'll record... I'll record like tomorrow probably, and give my reactions on Game 5. But I wanted to come on and talk about the big trade that happened yesterday, the Desmond Bane trade to the Orlando Magic. Now that there's been a little bit of time to kind of like, I guess review slash digest. I think the initial reaction to the trade was that the Grizzlies had kind of they got quite the haul, right? So full trade, Desmond Bane to the Magic, and the Memphis Grizzlies get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, and then 4 unprotected first-round picks. I think, I feel, and maybe some other people might push back, where I think the idea of draft picks, I feel, have been a bit blown out of proportion. Like, of course, like, it's entirely possible that one of those draft picks might convey and might result in a incredibly high caliber player, but more often than not, it's like if they aren't the number one pick, or if they somehow get lucky and it turns into like a second round Nikola Jokic pick, it's a little hard to like, I don't know, it can be a bit hard to discern and predict who those picks might ending up becoming. Obviously, the Grizzlies can still potentially make a move with those picks and that package now, and maybe turn that into someone else that can kind of, maybe sort of shift the roster a bit surrounding Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant. But yeah, I think, the conversation last season with especially the Mikal Bridges trade, where it was 5 first-round picks that were traded for him. I think some of that conversation, I understand that that trade value is a little inflated, especially following kind of the Rudy Gobert trade, right? I think teams and organizations look at that type of package and kind of conceive that, actually that is something that we could potentially obtain via trade as well, right? And if there is like a willing market out there, maybe teams like an Orlando Magic, who really have needed a player of Desmond Bane's caliber in terms of his, shot making and his scoring, may potentially overpay in this situation, right? But because of the value that they kind of associate with him as a player and a need for that team, this might just be a situation where that trade package value, while it does seem like quite a lot, is reasonable for the position that the Magic are in, right? I'm sure this has been something that's been taken into consideration where the Magic are now. They made it as a 7th seed in a pretty weak conference, and next season it feels very much open and up in the air, like we saw the Pacers run this year. I think that considering just all the other teams that are in that conference, Boston, they'll still probably be good, but it's not for sure that they're going to be like a top 3 team without Jason Tatum. The Bucks, it seems like Giannis is going to stay, so they might still be like a decent team with him, but they're not going to be like a great team. the Knicks are still going to be good, but we kind of saw, and depending on who they're able to get as a head coach, maybe they can, completely just like shift gears, kind of like in a Kenny Atkinson type of way, and just propel themselves into like a, just a greater degree of a team from this season. Cleveland is still going to be good, despite the fact that they, very clearly underperformed, and it just looked like they they hit all of the numbers during the regular season, but they very much fell short during the playoffs. Like, sure, you could pinpoint injuries and that kind of thing, but I really think that it's a little hard to undersell the fact that they just came up short, and there's like a clear weakness that their team has. So you're just taking all of these things, all of these positions into consideration. The Sixers, like I'm just naming other Eastern Conference teams, right? Like, you don't know for sure where they're gonna be at. So I think it's fair to want to like push, especially at this point in time. I think it's fair to want to try to take advantage of the situation that a lot of other teams are currently in, or rather the situation that the Eastern Conference is currently in, and try to just take advantage of that, right? I think that if the Magic kind of make the right moves, and the Desmond Bane kind of addition really kind of helps out with their case, like they could see themselves like back into kind of like a top, well, I guess they were a fifth seed in 2024, but you could really honestly cement them as like a playoff team in a weak conference like the East. So I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move. Like KCP, I thought it was a really great addition, but unfortunately he like regressed so significantly, just considering his time in in Denver. I think it just might have been the case where it was just like the Jokic bump, right? Like, he just played better alongside Nikola Jokic, and he just didn't really fit into the system and what was required of him with the Magic. Cole Anthony has had his moments, but he is incredibly inconsistent, right? He can be a good kind of microwave scorer and bench player, but his inconsistencies were pretty clear, especially during moments during the regular season in spurts. Like, if he couldn't score, they just did not have any bench production whatsoever, and that might still be something that might be an issue for them. But I do think that Bane kind of, I don't know, obviously Bane is a much higher caliber player than Cole Anthony is, so I think that's perfectly fine. And then the first round picks, which I mentioned, I don't know, it's kind of a toss up, right? Like, would you rather have a guaranteed player versus what it's just might be kind of taking a gamble with like a package of first round picks? I don't know. I really don't know. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that the Magic were maybe a bit like, I don't know, you could say that they they were I don't know, they were the loser in this trade, but honestly, I think it's fine. I think it's honestly a fair deal in this case, right? Like, you do get like a very high caliber player in Desmond Bane if you're the Magic, and then if you're Memphis, you are able to just, I don't know, you're maybe able to kind of pivot into a different direction with the draft capital that they've received. So honestly, I'm cool with the move. I kind of like it for both sides. And yeah, I think this sort of spells what may be a momentum shifter for the Magic, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that for them. Regarding some other rumors that have been popping up, some other trade stuff, KD trades just kind of galore, right? It seems they've reported that he's sort of narrowed down his preferred destination to places like a Houston, San Antonio. Where else? Did he say Minnesota? I don't remember exactly, but Houston and San Antonio are definitely kind of like the two top places, which is like, okay. The San Antonio fit will be interesting. KD's not, he's still a great player, but he's just not to the same caliber of superstar as he once was, right? Obviously the Warriors era was it was a different time altogether. After he came back from his Achilles, and was it Achilles or ACL? I don't remember. But his major injury, he performed like one of the best players in the league. The Nets run kind of coming up short against the Bucks in 2021, right? He's had his moments, but now that he is 37, it's a little tough for me to envision him kind of being like the leading, like it obviously didn't work out with Phoenix. So what's it going to look like as him as a complementary role player? It does seem to, I'm a little hesitant to want to crown a team like San Antonio as this team that could really be, I don't know, like be like a really strong, team, but because obviously Wembanyama, his growth, De'Aaron Fox, is he going to kind of fit in with that? And what are the Spurs going to give up? Would they prefer to draft the second pick and see how that kind of works out? Does that fit better with sort of their long-term goals? Or because they already kind of cashed in on the De'Aaron Fox trade, if they want to kind of fit into the timeline of wanting to try to compete now and try to really push this forward, would a KD addition help with that? I think it would, but I don't know. There feels this kind of uncertainty nowadays, and especially with KD's health too, right? He hasn't been the most healthy over the course of the last couple of seasons. Is that something that the Spurs want to? Is that something that they want to bank on? I don't know. I'm not totally sure of that. And in the Houston case, I can kind of see their vision and what they want to go for, right? In the first round series with the Warriors, there was a clear kind of offensive ceiling that they had. Jalen Green had one good game this series and has not shown up. He's kind of an example of someone who has these moments and has these bursts of, wow, he's an incredible player. He could really be someone special, to being like, he just could be more of just sort of like a glorified role player, or I don't know, he could be one of those that comes off the bench and that might fit his style of game better as opposed to being the primary scorer of a team, right? Really, like, you could just not feel his presence at all during these playoffs. Like, he just was not. He was a non-factor aside from that, the one game. Like, if he's not scoring, there's really not much else that you could really kind of expect from him. It's a little hard to kind of expect that much more from him, right? He's still young, of course, but in comparison to other players of his age and his of just kind of his, I don't know, just his age range. Like, I mean, you got Anthony Edwards, right? And then you got, who else? He's 23? Jalen Williams, J-Dub of the Thunder, Banchero is 22. Like you got, and sure, maybe I'm picking like number one picks over Green, but he was the number two pick, and it just has not resulted in. You just haven't really seen his growth over the course of the last couple of seasons. Again, he's had moments, he's had stretches, but it's just not like not a reliable, consistent go-to scorer and go-to player on both sides of the ball. So if you get KD and add him to the mix of what Houston has, I don't know what they're going to be. They'll most likely give up someone like Jalen Green or like a Jabari Smith Jr. and have KD kind of slotted along with like an Amen Thompson and Şengün. I don't know. It just is. They might be a good team, but that still feels like it has kind of a ceiling, right? Like KD's not gonna be who's their best player. I don't know if you really want to have 37-year-old KD as your best player in that situation. Do you expect Amen Thompson to make an even larger jump from the one he had this past season? Is he going to be kind of like their, I understand this whole notion of like a number one guy is not exactly, I don't know. You could argue that maybe some of that has sort of faded into the background, and the focus more is to have a better rounded team in the case of like an OKC or Indiana. But even in those instances, like you still have like who the best player is, right? Like Halliburton, sure, whatever, low scoring and that kind of thing. But as I've said before, the offense is of his kind of, it's under his wing. Like he's the one that is orchestrating all of that. So he has a clear stamp of his kind of his signature all over the Indiana Pacers. Like that's his team. The Thunder, they got Shea, right? So I do think that you still need to have like a potential like star caliber player. I just don't know if someone like Amen Thompson or Şengün you could necessarily qualify as being that number one player that you can kind of go to. You could have KD as sort of like the go-to scorer and maybe stretches and clutch time, but I think it's a lot to expect of him. I think it's a lot to put on his shoulders as being, he is an incredible player, but I don't know. They do have like a really solid base to kind of slot him in as a part of, but I don't know. I just feel that team has kind of a ceiling of sorts, and I don't know. I think it's a little hard to see the path, especially, and maybe this is my fault for thinking about what it's going to take for them to become like a contender, right? The West is so, outside of OKC, the West is such kind of a bloodbath. So maybe just being kind of afloat and staying, they were the number 2 seed this year. Are they going to remain that way the next year? If they can somehow just stay afloat and be kind of in the top 4 somehow, maybe that's enough for them, right? If it's expected that OKC are just going to continue to kind of be the best in the West, like I think maybe that's just like you just gotta like I don't know, you just gotta stay a little above everybody else, and you might be good if they can somehow just kind of replicate that success from this past season, at least during the regular season. Maybe that'll be enough for them, and maybe they just have to kind of find a way to the playoffs. It might just be another question altogether, but maybe they aren't too. Maybe they're not as worried about it as maybe others might be. So we'll see. But yeah, just based on speculation, those are kind of like the 2 teams. It's a little boring too, right? I think it's a little boring. Like it's not really super interesting in my opinion if he goes to either the Spurs or the the Rockets. If you went to like the East Coast again, that might be more interesting because like again of how much of a just how how much more wide open the East is, right? Oh, Miami was another team that came up. Yeah, like that's also not a very interesting like even if he goes to Miami, it's like all right, they might be like a decent team. They might be kind of in the same spot as they were this past season. Maybe they could get into like the top 6, but they're not going to be a contender, right? They'll be decent, but they're not going to be great. So I don't know. It just is like out of all of the teams, I guess maybe Houston is the most interesting. The Spurs is like, okay, it could really work out, but I don't know. There's a lot of questions, I think, especially just regarding Durant's health and everything, and how that's gonna kind of work out, right? And then also Wembanyama too. I hate to kind of bring that up, but hoping that he's able to kind of come back by the beginning of the season, cleared of his like blood clots and all that. But yeah, hopefully he's able to stay on the floor, and hopefully that's not going to remain an issue, because that would really suck because he's an incredible player to watch, and I don't necessarily want to be cheering for the Spurs of all teams, but I think it would be a shame if he wasn't able to play because of some lingering health issues, right? So yeah, hopefully he's able to show up on the court next year and consistently, and the blood clot stuff goes away in some way, shape, or form. Other things, other trade stuff. Oh, the draft is like coming up in like a couple weeks, right? I believe. So I guess, with just the results of the draft lottery, it's a little less exciting now because it's like, okay, I guess Cooper Flagg's going to Dallas. That's cool. Like the result that nobody wanted. Yeah, it's a little less exciting now. It's a little less interesting because it's like if you went to a team that was in the lottery, like actual teams that were that tanked to get Cooper Flagg or some of the other top draft prospects, it's just a lot less. I don't know, it's just not as exciting. I'm like, I don't like seeing these results. I'm a bit sour about that, but anyways, yeah, some other kind of speculations. We've been seeing a little bit about, I mentioned like Giannis was kind of like, it seems like he's off the block for now because it seems there just hasn't really been any discussion or movement regarding him getting traded. There has been some talk about like the Utah Jazz moving Lauri Markkanen, which is I think is so funny. Like I don't know. I know like this whole discussion like, oh, Danny Ainge, like he's a kind of like a decorated GM and that kind of stuff, but I think they were definitely vying to get, if they got Cooper Flagg, like I think this would have been kind of like a success for them, a successful tank, but unfortunately, and maybe that's just, I guess this is all like in hindsight, right? But they're kind of in a weird spot now because they're drafting pretty low, right? In the lottery, like, whoever they get, maybe it's like, oh, maybe they turn out to be a stud, but yeah, like this is definitely not the position that they wanted them, that they were envisioning. So it's like now they might kind of have to try to pivot and trade Markkanen for something. Maybe try to go into the tank again and hopefully get another draft prospect. But yeah, they're in a weird position. They're definitely in a weird position. So is Markkanen back on the block? Are the Warriors going to try to go for him? He's not exactly the center that they would want, but his size is like almost 7 feet, if not 7 feet. So that would be good. That would be like a good addition. Some other Jazz players, like I guess there's like Walker Kessler. Well, honestly, Kessler would be awesome if we were somehow able to obtain him. Like it's like, okay, now we got like an actual true center, and to kind of slot along with the rest of the team. Like I would be pretty happy about that. I actually think it might be better to have Kessler versus Markkanen because of the asking price, right? Like I'm sure like Markkanen would, there would be, they would demand more from him, for him versus Kessler. If we were able to kind of, I don't know, how much do we have in draft, in the draft, in draft stock? I'm not exactly sure, but if the Warriors are able to kind of do something here and there, maybe move off of like Moses Moody, maybe Kuminga, whatever, and get Walker Kessler, I'll be pretty happy about that, honestly. That would be a pretty ideal move, but I'm sure other teams are looking for a center as well. So, but yeah, that would be a great pickup. There are other players I have no interest in, honestly. John Collins, no, undersized. We have enough small forward. We have enough undersized players. Jordan Clarkson, I'm good. And I don't know who else is on that team. No disrespect. I just don't know if there's really a ton of desirable players outside of the ones I already mentioned. Yeah, it's a little kind of hard to envision, but yeah, I think, yeah, it's once again the conversation. Just the Warriors need some size. Like that's just what it kind of comes down to, and yeah, I think hopefully the front office is kind of looking at what's available in the market and try to make some moves. But I have some, honestly, with Dunleavy, I think has done a pretty good job so far. Last offseason they got Buddy Hield and Melton and Kyle Anderson, and obviously Anderson and Melton didn't work. Melton obviously just unfortunately because of his injury, but Buddy Hield has turned out to work pretty well. I like those moves on paper, and some of it worked out, some of it didn't. That just kind of comes with that gamble. And then obviously getting Jimmy Butler has been huge. And this next season is going to be it. I said that last year, how this season, the 2024-25 season was going to be it. But no, 25-26 is going to be kind of the last the last push. I think it's going to be, it's 2 years of the Jimmy contract. I don't know what is he going to try to get more money somewhere else. I have no idea, but he's wanted to be here. He's got the money now. He's got to kind of put in the work during the regular season. But we saw what that tandem of having both Steph and Jimmy on the court, what that kind of resulted in. Yeah, I have faith that they'll at least be able to put themselves in some level of contention, of playoff contention. Now it's just going to be the surrounding pieces and kind of what that looks like. But I'm cautiously optimistic after what we saw at the end of this season, going into the first round. Yeah, whoever they can get in the trade market during the off season, I will I'll be patiently and cautiously optimistic for those results. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna go and watch the Game 5 now. It hasn't started quite yet, but I want to get back and watch that. And then I'll talk about my thoughts tomorrow. I'm hoping that it's going to be an exciting game. I'm hoping that it's going to be a close game. We will see how that goes, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. All right, recording this on June 17. It is what day is it today? Today is Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Yesterday was Game 5 of the NBA Finals. Thunder won, as I kind of expected. Not in like a dominant fashion necessarily, but in a very convincing fashion. That fourth quarter was just like a ton of pacer turnovers that led to just like fast breaks and instant defense turned to offense kind of situation. And it was quite the performance. Also, Jalen Williams had an incredible game, 40 points. He was just everywhere on the court. He was just making these just ridiculous shots. As the game went on, I'm like, he's not going to make that one. And he made it. Like, just these, like, off-balance, off-the-glass layups and jumpers. He was incredible. And SGA had just kind of like he had a good game. He had like a 30 points and 10 assists and like 4 steals or something like that, or maybe I think it was like 4 blocks and 2 steals. So he had a great overall all around game as well. But yeah, it's the big thing I think is going to be Halliburton's injury. They haven't updated as of right now, which is around like 5:30. They haven't updated on his injury status. It seems like it might be like a potential calf strain, which sucks. I'm hoping that he can pull through and play on Thursday. But yeah, it's definitely a little concerning. And a lot of people are kind of, they're sort of claiming that this might be it, which I get it, you know what I mean? But they still got one more game in Indiana. I think the crowd's going to be there. I think other players are going to be able to show up for that. But yeah, it's going to be tough, right? You're on the brink of elimination, backs against the wall and all that kind of stuff. And you got this kind of lingering issue with Halliburton. He was definitely not playing right yesterday. Like he was just, he did not have a good game. But he just was not playing to his usual speed, and it didn't seem like he was confident at all in taking like any shots. So yeah, that's definitely a huge concern if you are the Pacers. But listen, like they've faced adversity before. Like they had this last year, they've had this earlier this year, and they've been able to come through. Obviously, it's a different situation because you're going up against what seems to be like a Thunder team that's kind of that's like clicking at the right moment, right? And it definitely feels like this is kind of theirs for the taking. And but I would like to see it out. We got to Game 6. Let's see Game 7. You know what I mean? I'm really hoping the Pacers can pull through so that they can make this extend this series and make this a good one. I guess the additional concern is the last couple of Game 7s that we have seen, if we do somehow get to Game 7, have not been the best. Like they've ended up in blowouts. It was the Nuggets Clippers series, which was a pretty disappointing Game 7. And then you had the Nuggets Thunder Game 7, which was also disappointing. So if we do get to that point, I'm hoping that it's not like a blowout by the Thunder. But yeah, I think that there's definitely some cracks that are along with the Halliburton injury. I think there have been some cracks that have been showing with the Pacers, like their ability to move so quickly and get into their action so quickly has more or less been dispelled, I would say, in terms of just how much pressure the Thunder have been putting on the defensive end. I think Nembhard had a really bad game yesterday. He had some real lowlights, some really poor decisions. It just felt like he was kind of involved in turnover after turnover after turnover down the stretch where it kind of, eventually led to the Thunder lead kind of ballooning to double digits. And yeah, because like they were like right on the brink. They were like it was like 2 points, kind of ending the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, I believe. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. The Pacers are going to do it again. But I think it just kind of slowly started to falter. Thunder continued to kind of make the right adjustments and really just pressuring the ball, pressuring, Halliburton and Nembhard and their main primary ball handlers. TJ McConnell had an incredible stretch in the third quarter. He had like 15 points or something like that in the third, but he barely played in the fourth, which I thought was kind of a bit questionable. Like, I understand, rotations are like fixed or whatever, but you gotta try to ride the hot hand. You know what I mean? Like he was their best player behind Pascal last night, and yeah, I don't know. It felt like they needed his energy a lot more, considering that Halliburton was pretty hampered, and then also the fact that Nembhard just was not playing up to par. I understand he was, really needed for his, defensive presence on SGA, but I mean, ultimately that didn't really amount to too much because, like, you had Jalen Williams going off, SGA still had 30, so, like, defensively they just couldn't nail it down. It was really on the offensive end where they just couldn't get into their offense, like, right? Like, if they were able to capitalize and execute on a few offensive stretches, I feel like that would have kept them in the game. But just the amount of turnovers that they had, I think it was like 20 plus turnovers yesterday. That's kind of a recipe for disaster. So I think that's kind of like, if you just watch the fourth quarter, that really kind of tells you the whole story, right? Like, you had earlier on, I guess, like first half, the Thunder had a fairly decent kind of lead and decent control of the game. And then, you got the Pacers coming back, the TJ McConnell flurry in the third quarter. But then the fourth, it was just the Thunder at their best. And I understand that's definitely tough to get past. But I'm hoping that Pacers have an answer for this Thursday. I really want to see them push this to a Game 7 series because it's been a long time. It's been a long time since we've gotten Game 7 in the finals. I think the last time was like 2016 when the Warriors blew the lead. I think that was the last time we got a Game 7. So it would be nice to see that. And yeah, just like the high stakes pressure, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of pressure. Like, I definitely think it would still be favoring the Thunder, but I don't know. Like, that's a lot of stress going their way, trying to close it out at home. And I think if you're Indiana, you want to put that pressure on them, right? And then yeah, I think that's kind of, I mean, what else? What other way out do they have? Like, they have to win in 7 now. So, yeah, really, really hoping for a Game 7. If we don't get that, I still think this has been an incredible series. We've had one of the best finals that we've had in quite some time. Honestly, like, as much as the Warriors one is going to stick out to me. But honestly, in terms of just like enjoyment, the 21 finals is kind of was a good one. I talked about this earlier when I was giving like, or a little while back when I was giving my Giannis eulogy, which has not aged very well because it doesn't seem like he's going to be leaving the Bucks, anytime soon. But yeah, I was talking about that 21 finals run, and I was just, there were some really key moments that still really stick with me, like really just like incredible plays, like the Giannis block on DeAndre Ayton, and then the alley-oop from Jrue Holiday. Like, those are like all time, honestly, in my head, like those are like all time NBA plays, like finals plays and moments. Like, those will kind of like stick out to me in just in just like my memory of like the finals that I have seen, you know what I mean? And then also the fact that they were down 2-0 and then they, won 4 in a row. Like that's like pretty, it's some gutsy stuff. And then the 50-point Giannis game to like close it out. Like that was a really memorable finals for me. And then I already talked about this, but this is like coming out of like COVID in a way, when things, finally started to kind of open back up in 2021. And then, you got to see like people actually out and about for the first time in a long time. And then just like that energy, it was just like people wanted to be a part of something. And that was really special. Right. So that really is sort of memorable to me. And then of course you got 22 with the, Steph finally getting his finals MVP and everything. I guess coming back from like 2-1 as well, it's not as like impressive, but it's still something. They were down in the series. I remember I was watching game 3 at a bar, I think, and then they went down 2-1 and I was like, shit. Oh man, this might be it, man. I do not want to lose to the Celtics team at that time. And eventually they were able to pull through. But yeah, I like outside of that, like there's not like, I don't know, there's no like signature like super memorable finals in the last like 10-ish years outside of obviously like 2016 and like the like if you're gonna get like the Warriors run and stuff, of course, like I'll remember that, but like the KD Warriors, like there's not like a moment necessarily, right? I guess there's like LeBron going for 50 in some of those finals games, but yeah, outside of that, there's not like a signature moment that I can think of there. Like it hasn't been that way for a good amount of time. So like at least like at least 2021, there hasn't really been like this is like the finals moment. You know what I mean? I didn't watch last year's finals. I don't think there was really anything that stuck out in that series. 2023, I don't really, it was just like, I guess it was when like Miami tied them in Denver. I was like, oh, we got a series, but then no, we did not have a series. So it's just like outside of that, like I can't really think of like a moment. So this series has been really good. I guess like game 1, right? Game 1 is, yeah, you got the Halliburton game-winning shot there. That will definitely be a moment. But I think in terms of like the Thunder's like signature, like, oh, this is like, it's ultimately their defense, but they just don't have, it's like team defense is not something that results in like in highlights like that. You know what I mean? Like there's not like a highlight worthy moment. Like maybe SGA has some like incredible shot making, but honestly, like maybe game 4 he has some shots here and there, but there was that one push off shot which I think people got kind of mad about it being a non-call, and also it's like a push off and a bit of a travel. So in terms of like whoa, this is like a crazy, we haven't gotten that outside of the Halliburton shot in game 1, right? So we still got Thursday, and then we still got game 7. Hopefully, I'm really hoping we get game 7. So maybe those games can deliver. Maybe we can get some shocking. Maybe we get a few more Pacers moments this season to really close it out, really put a nail on the coffin on what has been an incredible playoff season. And honestly, what's been a pretty good NBA season overall, right? If you really want to just kind of wrap the bow and tie it all together. It has been just like a great overall season, regardless of who ends up being the winner. I think so. The draft is going to be coming up, I think on tomorrow, which is crazy. Is it tomorrow? I don't remember, but it's coming up. And, I've sort of been like, I don't know, I'm probably not going to watch it. I'll I'll see what the results are. I'll see like what teams are going to pick. But I don't know how engaged I am going to be with it. Again, it's maybe some of the results of it have kind of soured on me, but who knows? Maybe we get some surprises. Whoever the teams do draft, I am interested in seeing how they get incorporated into their respective teams. I like, it sucks for kind of the tanking teams. Like, it sucks for the teams that have been deliberately poor over the course of this season. The fact that they don't get even into like the top three. But who knows? Like, you can still have like Steph Curry was like number 7. Like, a lot of great players have been drafted out of like the top 3. So it's entirely possible that we might get some. You never know. Like, we might get some incredible players that aren't traditional lottery picks, right? Some players might not pan out to be like all that great. You never know. You never know. Because it's funny looking back on certain drafts, and I think the whole conversation about that is like, oh, you look back and see, who was like drafted before Giannis or whatever, and then obviously you got like Jokic, who was drafted in the second round during like a Taco Bell commercial. Like, that's like the whole, that's his whole. That's been like a whole talking point, right? But I do think, I do think it is interesting trying to like monitor, how different teams are going to approach who they decide to pick, right? If you are one of the teams who unfortunately got like a lower seed, like a lower pick in the draft, who they decide to pick, is that going to be dependent on the upside of that pick, or are they going to try to do more so for a fit, right? Like in the case of Washington, for example, they're drafting number 6, right? Are they going to draft availability? Are they going to draft on, who is just going to be the best overall player remaining in that position? Are they going to try to find a pick that they can kind of fit alongside their already pre-existing young nucleus of like a Alex Sarr, Koulibaly, and who else? Bub Carrington, of course, my favorite. Are they going to try to get like Kamal? It's Malawak, right? Kaman Malawak from Duke. He's like a center for. So maybe they do like a center and do like a double big kind of thing with Sarr. I don't know. It's interesting to kind of think about. But I think I watched this one kind of like mock draft video yesterday, just kind of going over some of the best prospects in this draft. And I don't really I don't know anybody, because I don't really pay attention to college hoops, even though I've said that I maybe will in the future. But it is interesting hearing about kind of the different players that do, the commentators were kind of talking about, like, would a team, like, for example, like the Sixers are kind of in an interesting spot where there's the potential. It's like, hey, do they actually want to trade down to get more trade assets so that they can potentially make a move to get someone else? That was like one of the, potential suggestions that was made for the Sixers, right? You got the Spurs with the second pick. Do they just want to draft a Dylan Harper, or do they want to trade him in a package deal to get Kevin Durant? Like, I don't know. Like, those are kind of things that are part of the conversation. I think those are kind of things that, there's a lot of implications involved with, how a team drafts and the direction that they're moving forward. And I think it is interesting to see kind of like where where different teams are. Like Phoenix is in just such a, they're in such like this kind of purgatory position where like they are going to trade Durant, but they really have to find the best kind of deal for him, right? Like if they want to continue to try to like retool around Devin Booker, what can they garner? And then I guess Bradley Beal too, because they're stuck with him. He's with the no trade clause and all that. Like they have to really find a way to kind of maximize that, right? I mean, I think Matt Ishbia has really explicitly said that they don't want to trade Booker, which makes sense. I totally get that. He's been their franchise player for a little while now. But also, like, what is their direction gonna be? Like they're in the West. It's not like a situation to Milwaukee where they can just, I think Milwaukee's position is now a little bit more interesting because of the fact that they are in the Western Conference and that they can kind of roll with what they have. You know what I mean? And it's not going to be like a great team, but as long as you have a Giannis, like they'll be, like they could still be like a mid-table team. I say mid-table, like this is football, but you know what I mean. They'll be like a, I don't know, lower seeded playoff team in the Eastern Conference because of just the shakeup and the fact that there's not really, there's not really a ton of great teams outside of like the Knicks maybe and some others, like the Pacers will probably be up there. But yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's going to be kind of it'll be interesting to kind of see what Phoenix is able to do with Durant. Like, are they going to be able, like, are they even going to be able to get anything from him? I have no idea. Like as I sort of talked about yesterday, like he's older. He's not a he's not like a positive asset anymore necessarily. Like he's not going to garner the same like trade package as he did when he initially came to Phoenix like a few years ago. It's just like, a 37-year-old who's kind of prone to injury and those kinds of things. It's going to be difficult to convince teams that really have this kind of need, I guess, outside of a team of Houston's caliber and position. I think it's a little difficult to envision teams really kind of selling off their assets to get him at this point of his career, right? Unless there is this like specific need for him in the case of a Houston. So that kind of puts Phoenix in a bit of a bind. It kind of puts them in a difficult position, as if they weren't already in a difficult position. The fact that they don't have any, they don't have any draft picks this draft. They don't have any draft picks in the foreseeable future, right? Really, their only real positive trade asset is Devin Booker at this point in time. So I don't know. I think it's going to be tricky for them. They're already in a tricky spot. So I don't know. I think it's going to be tough for them regardless. So yeah, I think they kind of are stuck with where they are unless they can get a decent haul for Durant. Really the biggest thing, and this has been talked about to death at this point, is the Bradley Beal contract. Like that contract absolutely kind of destroyed any direction that they can take their team. The fact that he just takes up so much of their cap, and then also the no trade clause, right? it is just kind of a bit of a nasty situation. It's worked out for the Wizards, really, right? Being able to kind of get off of that, and being able to kind of move in the direction that they have. I've seen a lot of this, I think it's too much to read into individual comments regarding, fans and fan bases and all that. But I have seen people being like, oh, the Wizards, the Wizards are wizarding because they're kind of stuck. But I think this is kind of coming from like the perspective from people that aren't really paying a lot of attention. I know it's easy to say that just considering where they've been, but they were a really, like the Westbrook years was like what, 2018, 2019 or so. So sure, it's been a little while since that point, but they ran with this kind of Bradley Beal center team for a little bit after that. And beyond that, it hasn't really been that long since they really started to pivot towards like fully tanking and fully rebuilding. So like, yeah, while they haven't been good for a few years now, the direction that they took really kind of started to materialize this sort of these past couple of seasons, right? And now that they have kind of this young sort of core, really the missing piece for them is that star player, which I think, a lot of people like myself was hoping that they could get like the number one pick, because I think that would have been like a really great destination for like a Cooper Flag, or even like a Dylan Harper, who's kind of touted to be a pretty good player. But so what is it going to be for them this year? Like, I don't know what the next, I haven't really heard a ton about next year's draft prospects. But like, is it worthwhile for them to continue to try to tank and try to get, a higher pick next year, so that they can, maybe that player is going to be their star player. I mean, who knows? Maybe this year, whoever they draft at number 6 is going to turn out to be a stud, and maybe that's who they want to try to kind of really build around. But that's like the one. I'm jumping all over the place because now I'm like, I'm going from the Suns to the Wizards. I guess I'm sort of circling back on discussions about the draft. But what is their gonna position be? That like they're like kind of the one team that, out of all of the draft teams, I am kind of the most interested in seeing what they do, because all of the other unfortunately, it's like Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia are like the top 3, and it's like they're all pre-established, they're all established. I know the Sixers are in a weird funky spot with Embiid and stuff, but like at least they have, I don't know, like they've been like a team for a good while now. And it's like kind of beyond that, like Charlotte, I have no interest in that team. Like that just is, it's just like I just don't like anything that they got going on over there. I forgot who number 5 is. Is it Utah? No, I think it's someone else. I don't remember. It might be Houston. I don't remember exactly the draft order. I'll see it once we get there. So it's like outside of like some of these other, and then the Jazz are kind of in a weird spot because they've been tanking for a few years and they just haven't had any like real like success with their draft prospects. And whoever, I don't know who they're gonna get this year. Maybe this year will be kind of the shift that they're looking for. But it's like you've had like Lauri Markkanen under contract for a while, and he's expensive, and they've been like resting him, and it's like which has sort of tanked his trade value, right? Like it's just like I don't know what, like I don't know what the pivot for them is going to be. Like maybe they can get some things from if they do end up trading, a Markkanen or a Walker Kessler or something like that, like I said. So outside of that, I feel like Washington is like the one team out of like all of like the tanking teams, like all of the worst teams in the league. Like they're kind of like the one that I see some hope for the future. They also have veteran presence. Like they have Jordan Poole. He's technically a veteran now. They got Chris Middleton, Marcus Smart. So they have, they have additional potential like trade pieces if they really want to move off of them, or they can kind of be there to help mentor and foster and, help their help the younger core continue to grow as, whatever they continue to maybe tank in a direction and try to gain more players. But that's like they got something going. Like I would be like, it sucks, it totally sucks, I get it that they didn't get like a top 3 pick, but at least there is some hope for the future in comparison to some other teams that are in that mix, right? At least you have, there is like potential. I like their play. I like some of their players. Like I like Sarr. I've mentioned Bub Carrington. I'm a big Bub Carrington fan since watching some of his highlights in like the summer league. I like Koulibaly. And Keyshawn George has had some nice moments as well. And look, I'm still like, I understand people don't like Poole, and look, his last year was not good, but we also understand the circumstances that led to that point. I'll always be rooting for him. I will be, unless he goes to like the Lakers or something. Like but I don't really anticipate that happening. He's he helped win a championship with the Warriors. He was very, he was pretty significant in that run, and I'm happy that he's had a nice kind of bounce back year this past season, and he's had a couple of like he had that one game winning shot against Denver, which really sticks out to me. I remember watching that where he shot from freaking like 10 feet behind the arc, and winning that game. So I he's just fun to watch sometimes. I understand, like, he can definitely be infuriating and frustrating at times as well. But I'm happy with like what I'm happy with like what he's been able to accomplish, and I hopefully, maybe this kind of puts him in a position, like if he is maybe just like a contributor to this Wizards team for the time being, or if he's able to kind of get his trade value up so that maybe there's like another team that might take a chance on him. I like to see this kind of him kind of re-establishing himself in a way. So that's been good. So the Wizards are kind of a compelling case to me out of all of like the quote unquote tanking teams. I would say the Wizards and then the Raptors, although the Raptors are not like they're a fascinating team. I think they're going to be a playoff team next year. Because somebody needs to be good in the East, and they at least have some players that are good. I just don't know, how that fit is going to look. They've also been floated among a lot of KD and Giannis rumors, but I just don't know how they're going to get involved unless they, trade a bunch of their younger assets, and I just don't think that would make sense, especially if you're trying to kind of build around a Scotty Barnes, right? So, yeah, a lot of things going on. Draft is coming up. Game 6 is going to be coming up on Thursday. I really need to confirm when the draft is. I think it is I think it is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. I'll need to confirm that. But yeah, I'll check it out. I don't know if I'm going to watch it live, but I will. I'll check it out. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for now. Oh yeah, one other note. I technically completed I beat Rogue Legacy 2. You can continue to beat the game and then build upon this like new game plus file, kind of in like a similar way to when you, I guess, beat a run in Hades. There's more continuation and there's more to be uncovered, which is cool. So yeah, I'll continue to play it. But for now, I've essentially kind of beat the game, which is really cool. It feels satisfying. And I can kind of have that as like a, sort of secondary game while I play something else. I'll probably still continue to sort of like test myself, and I've gotten pretty comfortable with the controls and stuff. So yeah, maybe I'll just probably continue to just play it until I maybe get tired of it. But really fun game. I really like the progression of everything. It's very much, it's kind of the same reason why I like Hades as well, just in terms of the progression and like this, I guess story, even though I'm not, I haven't really paid too much attention to the story. Like there's just more to do beyond you completing a run. And I think that's really cool. So there's just more for you to do, more for you to unlock. And it just is like a continuous game that you can really, really put a lot of time into if you desire. So I think that's really cool. I think I like the fact that, even though I'm not someone who does necessarily like, post-game content a lot of the time, like once I beat the story or the main kind of through line or the main quest of a game, it's hard for me to kind of go back to it. But in these instances, there's actually more to do. So that kind of incentivizes me to go back to them. If I ever feel the want to. So yeah, I'll probably continue to play it for a while and just kind of see how much more I can kind of push into it and see if I can complete like another run, so on and so forth. So yeah, I think beyond that, I've been thinking about, I've been sort of looking around and seeing what games I want to play. I like playing this game, which is playing Rogue Legacy 2, which is sort of like a 2D action platformer game, has kind of given me this a bit of an itch to play something along those lines. Sort of like maybe like a 3D platformer type of game. So I've been looking around. I've been sort of thinking about what I want to try next. Yeah, I guess I'll update, if there has been anything that comes to mind, because that's been really kind of itching and sort of like, working with my brain, if you want to call it that. So, yeah, that's a little quick gaming update, but yeah, anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been Save the Semantics, signing off.